This is NTV.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangu Shampagi. And tonight we will be looking at the media and how we are covering the current political standoff. And the big question is the media providing adequate analysis? Are we just reporting events as they are? Or are we providing the right context with which our viewers, our readers, our listeners on radio and other platforms can be able to get a comprehensive understanding of exactly what is going on? A brief update: you are aware through bulletins on NTV and through reports in other media, in the newspapers, that Robert Senta Muchagulanyi, after a bit of ping pong with security, was able to exit the country and is right now in the United States of America, where he is receiving medical treatment. No decision has been made as yet as to what will happen to Francis Zake, the Member of Parliament for Mityana Municipality. He remains hospitalized and in bad condition from what we're hearing, but he hasn't been allowed to get out of the country, though officially Zake hasn't been charged of any offense at the moment. But we'll be putting all that into context and looking at how the state security agencies have been dealing with journalists and other Ugandan protesters in the current standoff, whose face at the moment is the Chadondo East Member of Parliament, Robert Senta Muchagulanyi, commonly known as Bobby Wine. We'll of course also be commenting about that incident involving Robert Senta Muchagulanyi. Built his name as an entertainer, as a musician, and now on the stage is another musician called Bebe Cool, who was chased off stage at the Taras Riley concert on Friday. To discuss that with me tonight, I have seasoned journalist, I should call you that, and journalism trainer, Barbara Mong. Very nice to have you, Barbara.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
We also have from the Daily Monitor, executive editor, Charles Odobo Bichache.
Good evening, viewers.
Very nice to have you, Charles. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Charles, let me start with you. The question I've been getting from a lot of people who watch this show, who follow the work that we do as journalists, is the question of, we are not providing adequate context. We are not explaining things. We are reporting, yes, there was an incident in Arua, Yasin was killed, we report he was killed. There was a by-election, people know there was a by-election, we report there was a by-election. People were arrested, we report there was an arrest. Do you believe, do you think that is fair criticism to the media, you being a person in the kitchen, cooking the things that...
Yes, certainly. I think that I've had that criticism, and I think it's a fair criticism, but also perhaps we need to understand the constraints that the media has in covering this situation. You have seen what has been happening to the media, that the media has been targeted by security forces. So in context like that, it becomes very, very difficult it takes away the story. The journalists are focusing on surviving in the field rather than doing the story that they should be doing. But certainly I think the criticism is well taken. I think we are not doing enough. We should do more. If you look at the shooting in Arua, we are not doing the explanation, like you said, the context, the way we should. And because of that, you find that the social media is running the show. And social media has a lot of things that are not necessarily accurate. So I think we need to step back and take center stage as the mainstream media. If you take the incident, for instance, the shooting of the Bobby Wine's driver, until a few days ago, we were all reporting about Bobby Wine's driver having been shot. Until when we got this, we managed to get a witness, and it turns out that he wasn't Bobby's driver. He was in the car. He wasn't.
So Yasin Kamoga wasn't driver.
He was not driving Bobby Wine's car. He wasn't driving him. But he had just come into this car at the point he was shot. And this lady was in the car with Yasin. And she was shot. The bullet that shot Yasin, perhaps a second bullet, hit
grazed.
grazed her. So we never interrogated and found out, okay. The other thing, if you look at Bobby Wine's car is a Tundra, it's a left-hand drive.
Yes.
And Yasin was sitting on the right. So that should have prompted us journalists to ask questions. What was the driver doing on the other side?
Where there's no steering wheel.
Where there's no steering. Was he the driver or was he not the driver? So I think we need to interrogate.
But wasn't that because Bobby Wine tweeted and said, my driver has been shot?
Yes. So we picked that.
Yes.
So the media picked that. The social media picked that. The mainstream media picked that. And it was not interrogated at all.
But if you look at, have we asked the question, for example, was this accidental shooting? Was it deliberate shooting? Did the shooter know that this is a left-hand drive car, so the passenger on the other side is likely to be someone else?
I think the subsequent events, the torture, the arrests, kind of took away the focus. So nobody has focused on those issues because the bigger issues now unfolding immediately after that. The treason trial, the torture of the suspects, it has kind of, these questions have taken a back seat, but I think they need to come back.
Barbara, let me turn to you. You, in some interpretation, you're staring at a political crossroads. And as the media, you're expected to be explaining these things with a deeper political, political and historical context, which many people tend to think is lacking at the moment. We could have had someone like Joachim Buembo here. He wrote an excellent article for the East African, which unfortunately isn't in the paper today, in the paper that's run this week. Maybe it will be running next week, tracing back moments like this. And it takes all the way back to a man called Michael Kagwa, who was one of the first DP members to disagree with the NRM government, for example. And he says, at that time, Paul Kawanga Semogerere was the Minister for Internal Affairs. So the responsibility fell on Paul Kawanga Semogerere, President General of the Democratic Party, to deal with a member of his party who disagreed with. Then you move, you have...
the DP Mobilizers
group. Yes, DP Mobilizers group. Then you have a fallout like the one of Waswa Ziritwaula at the extension of the NRA, the NRC, which he opposed. One individual walked out of parliament. I think that's one of the most important resignations that we have seen in this country, because people don't resign that easily in this country. He resigned his seat. By the time he had been rehabilitated and tried to be brought back on the NRM side, he had a disaster because he lost miserably for the Kampala mayoral race. Then you have the arrival of Besigye. You have, now you have arrived at, yes, you have JPAM. Now you have Bobby Wine. Is the reporting able to capture that context? Or maybe are we actually there?
Well, I would like to pick up from where Charles actually ended, saying that we fall short of the public expectation in our reporting. I agree that we actually fall short of the public expectation. But then also you mentioned Joachim Buembo. If you mention people like Joachim Buembo, they're no longer in the newsroom. The newsroom in Uganda right now is a very young newsroom, and actually also tells you something about the population of this country, where they say about 70% of Ugandans are actually less than 30 years. So these are people who have not been privy, or they've not had that 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 mentoring that is actually required that you find in the Western newsrooms. They've not had the mentoring that you find in other African countries, because so many people do leave the newsroom at a very young age. After 2, 3, 4 years, I am a veteran, you know, right now. Actually, I've also retired.
Amazing
you know,
that you can become
yeah,
a veteran
I'm
at
not.
your
I'm
age.
not doing day-to-day journalism right
Yes.
now, and that tells you that the problem we have right now, even the fallouts that as recent as the one of Tinye Funza and the NRM, you know, the one of the former security minister, General Tumukunde, and what happened just 8 years ago. If you go to the newsroom right now, you find very few people actually can talk about that. If you go to the opposition, what happened in the UPC before the death of Obote, actually, you know, the Cecilia Ogwal and Ranyarare, what happened there, very few people actually remember that fallout. Very few people actually do remember the struggle, actually, against one party political system, which is the movement political system, and then the adoption of the multi-party political system. And this is happening because of the high turnover. Like every now and then, you know, you have people leaving their newsroom, people leaving their newsroom. So yes, that gap is actually being created. And because of that gap, we cannot then ably explain the current political situation and put it in context. Because Arua did not start, the violence in Arua or the political contestation in Arua did not start with what happened to Bobby Wine. Before that, we were actually focusing on the late Abiriga, you know, his shooting and what happened to Abiriga. But did we actually even care to actually dig deep and find out beyond this person that everyone sees as a humorous character, as a joker and everyone, who was actually Abiriga? Where did he come from? How did he actually manage to edge out opposition out of Arua municipality, a place that was actually, you know, had like
Strong opposition.
stronghold of opposition, 90%, you know, opposition votes, you know, in Arua municipality. So what happened? We cannot explain the factors, you know, that actually played out in Arua, you know, to bring back the Kassiano Wadri with someone who is also from the opposition. So how come the NRM lost just after 2 terms? Before that, before Abiriga, we had Gabriel, who is the current state minister for works, I think. Is it? Yes, we had him. So what happened in the 10 years that the NRM was ruling Arua municipality, and now that it's gone to the opposition, what went wrong? So we are lacking in that area because we do not have the background, we do not have the understanding. Even issues as simple as that, even 2 days before elections, there was a huge public debate in Arua where you had all the candidates. You had Kassiano Wadri, you had Ejiko, you had Nusrat Pero, who was the NRM candidate, actually hold a big public debate in Arua. And it was such a peaceful, but it was a very hot debate. Actually, yes, Tipero actually didn't show up for that debate, but all the other political candidates were there. It was a very heated debate. It was organized by the NGO Forum, and there was absolutely no violence. I was in Arua 3 weeks to the election date, and I did observe and actually a bit of reporting on the campaigns that were actually happening in Arua. How on any given day you'd have 2 or 3 political candidates actually from different, you know, backgrounds, totally different camps actually, hold a rally and a procession across town, and then there was no violence. So this sudden violence that came into Arua, where did it come from? We needed to put this in context as the media. So we actually failed in that area.
Just let me come back to you. Barbara raises a very important question. The story of Abiriga is dead.
Yes.
With a man, I think.
Yeah.
6 people were killed or died at the burial of Ibrahim Abiriga.
Yeah.
Plus Abiriga and his brother, that makes the number 8.
Yes.
Yasin Kauma makes the number 9. You reported, I think in the Monitor, that there was another person who was killed in Arua.
Yes.
Or on the 13th of
on the day of the standoff.
Yes, the day of the standoff.
Yeah.
That makes the number
10.
10.
Yeah, 10.
2 people died in Mitiana municipality
Yeah.
as a result of the demonstrations over the arrest of Zake. That makes the number 12.
Yes.
A dozen people dead.
Yeah.
I think they're actually 13 because I think a student died.
Yeah,
Yes,
there was
yes,
a
yes,
student
yes,
who died
yes.
from a stray bullet, yeah.
Rachel
Yes,
Ayabaziwe.
yeah.
So you
That
have
brings the number to 13.
13 people who have died in a very short period of time
Yeah.
over a political, and all this is political.
Yes.
Every bit of it is political. And we haven't questioned, we haven't even asked, yes, we might get some stage and ask the questions about whether there is the investigation over Abiriga's murder is still continuing, whether somebody will actually get convicted. But who is Abiriga? Where did he come from? Was he the comic character that we saw driving a yellow car, dressed all in yellow? Do people just emerge from nowhere and begin taking on such extremes? And why would he be targeted?
Yeah, I think we had a bit of, the time when he died, there was a bit of focus on who Abiriga and how he emerged, you know, from the Uganda National Rescue Front, how he was, you know, he was part of that rebellion. He was an RDC. So a bit of...
Together with Moses Ali.
with Moses Ali. So
Yeah.
there was a bit of things actually came out at the point of his death. But after that, I think the whole country moved on. The media moved on, and the public moved on into the by-election. And I think it's a bit unjust that we should not ask questions about the progress of the Abiriga investigation. I think we need to go back to that. Obviously, things have been moving very fast. We also need to put a name to a lot of people who were tortured in Arua, who were all these people who died. We need to put a name to them, and we need to ask the authorities a question. The media has been, I think, one of the things that we are having a huge challenge is the social media seems to be driving a lot of the information flow, and we are trying to
Play catch up.
play catch up with the social media, because that's where the audiences are, and the audiences are consuming specifically certain information, and very uncritically. So I think that's the challenge, not just for the media. It's really a challenge for, I mean, even the US Trump will tell you the same thing. So it's a challenge because the new media does not create its own agenda, and it's not systematic. The traditional media will be able to try and create a systematic flow of information, but that's not very possible in the circumstances because of the disruption that's there. But certainly, I think we need to put a name, we need to put faces, we need to ask questions about.
How will you be able to do that if you're confronted with what Barbara talked about? You have a very young newsroom. If you ask anybody, I mean, 90% of the reporters you have at the monitor do not remember that Besigye made a grand return to this country on I think October 26th, 2005, from a 5-year exile. And people will not remember that Tumukunde had a major fallout with the system, was rehabilitated and came back. People will not remember.
After
people
8
will not
years in detention.
after. Yes. I mean, where are you going to stand to be able to do that?
Then you also need to ask about the readers. What do the readers want to read about what happened to Tumukunde 10 years ago? Are they going to, is that what they want to consume?
Should they be reading that? Should they be consuming it?
Yeah, they should be consuming it, perhaps in, well, packaged in a certain way. So you find that we have a challenge in the newsrooms in that we have few experienced people who can dig back and bring context, but then we also have an audience that has very, very short attention span, an audience that is not really engaging. So when so we are creating, a lot of the media is creating information to serve that audience, because then you need to package in a certain way for them to consume it. So that's a challenge that we have, but certainly it's information that should be.
Charles,
yes.
to add on to that, I think actually all is not lost for the media, despite the growing popularity of social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, and all that in this country and actually across the world. I think what makes journalism special is the discipline of verification. And that's why everyone runs to journalists, to the traditional media and say, what's the Daily Monitor saying? What's the New Vision saying? What's NTV reporting? Or what's actually Monitor Online saying? Or what's KFM saying actually about this? It's because of the discipline of verification. And what the media houses need to do is to invest, because we have this opportunity to reach a huge audience, which is the big audience that is online. So how do we reach this audience? We need to deploy more. We need to invest in human resource and then deploy this people if it means to be in Arua or to be in Gulu at that time. And you're giving that up to that minute by minute account of what's happening in Gulu, of what's happening at the military barracks, or what's actually happening downtown in Kiseka. We need to do that. We need to invest and actually do that. So are we actually, as the media, are we investing actually to serve the public? Are we actually investing to give them quality news, well-researched, well-balanced news that actually, puts everything in context, that explains what's happening in this country? Because journalism for me is history on the run. Okay, every single day we are reporting, we are actually we're contributing to history. Now, if we can't capture that, if media houses, if media owners cannot actually invest in that, then actually we are doomed, because 70% of what's on social media, that's according to various research, is trash. Then it's only about 10% actually that is verified information. And who are the people who verify this information? The journalists. It's not the experts, it's not the scientists, it's not the historians, it's the journalists who then gather this information, sieve, assess this information and actually publish it or present it to the public. So this is an opportunity for us. The social media should not worry us, should not be a disadvantage, but should be an opportunity for us to actually then grow that revenue, reach the bigger audience, and actually then serve the public.
Just before we take the break, because you excited our viewers, I imagine, with your question about who was Ibrahim Abiriga. Would you like to conclude that? Who was he? He talks about his experience his background as from the Uganda National Rescue Front to the rebel group that negotiated with the National Resistance Movement and the army to join hands and then get out of the bush with Moses Ali, Juma Oris. Yes. I think the late Juma Oris. Who was Abiriga?
I can't really say I know who Ibrahim Abiriga was. But from my reporting, the time I first went to West Nile, way back in 2000, I think that was 2004, 2005, Abiriga to me was a self-made politician. He was not propped or financed or by a political party, by the NRM. And all that, and the NRM were just lucky that Abiriga decided to say, for me, this is my political party. I'm going to adopt this political party. Abiriga, yes, he was RDC. Before he was RDC, he was of course in the rebel group that Charles mentioned, the UNLF, the Uganda National Rescue Front. He was with the Bamuzes, he was with the General Moses Alis after that. And then he benefited from that amnesty which was given, the deal that the government had with the West Nile Bank Front and all these other rebel groups in West Nile. So he was one of the beneficiaries of that group, because he was also in the leadership of that group. So from there, he then got into politics in Arua. But before that, there's a group, a very famous group in West Nile called the OPEC Boys. The OPEC Boys, semi-literate or illiterate group of young businessmen who either smuggle goods across the borders, that is South Sudan, DRC Congo.
Petrol.
And yes, so there's the fuel, which is the petrol and all that, but there are also small goods that they actually take into this. So because of that, they have huge sums of money. And because of that, they then support so many other smaller groups within Arua, especially Arua district. And so what the OPEC, and so Abiriga was one of those. And the OPEC boys, you saw them how they actually took over the body. They have their own culture, they have their own language, they have the side. So Arua is separated into the upper hill of the Arua, and the lower side where you have the poor, the semi-literate people, the retailers actually live. Then the upper hill side is where the educated people, the rich people, the expatriates, the UN people who go to the refugee camps and all that do live. So Arua is divided into that. You know, the rich and then they both are actually rich, but the literate and the educated.
The elite and
yes. So Abiriga had a huge following. So because among the other group, the OPEC boys, and because of the amount of money that he has accumulated from trade, he used to call himself the MP in waiting. So he would slaughter bulls on big days. He would actually pay school fees for the poor. He would bring people together and have debates and discussions and all that. Now, when he was appointed RDC, he continued with his mobilization. And at some point, it was such a threat that they actually mobilized, I think it was even the NRM people, and he was transferred to, I think, Yumbe. And from there, he protested, and he resigned. And he said to come back, and on his own, I'm going to mobilize my people, and I'm going to become the MP of this area. So that's what actually Abiriga did. He was a self-made politician. He was not as innocent as people actually say he was.
Yeah, at the risk of going back so much into the history of the individual, the late Ibrahim Abiriga, the context I'm looking for, Charles and Barbara, is if you have these political contestations, a man who was once a rebel, who gets assassinated once he has arrived and become a member of parliament in the central, just outside Kampala. You'd extend and call where he was Kawanda, also part of Kampala, the greater Kampala metropolitan area. He gets assassinated, and now you have that killing graduating into a phenomenon called Robert Senta Muchagulanyi, 36 years, and he's being discussed in the context of people power, and people tagging the moniker, our president, and actually causing a significant discomfort to the holders of power who are coming from all this background. Can we look into that after a very short commercial break? We'll be right back.
Extraordinary could be right there in front of you without you even knowing it. A bold expression of flavor like no other. Discover extraordinary flavor. Guinness, made of more. Download the free DSTV Now app and stream all 380 matches of the Premier League anywhere and anytime. Only on SuperSport on DSTV, where football never stops.
This is an important message from the Ministry of Health. There's an Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. As a neighboring country, Uganda is at risk of an Ebola outbreak. Ebola is a serious disease that kills within a short time but can be prevented. You can protect yourself from Ebola by avoiding all direct physical contact with a person infected with Ebola, avoiding direct physical contact with body fluids such as blood, saliva, feces, vomit, urine, and sweat of a person infected with Ebola, washing your hands thoroughly with soap and clean water in case of any direct physical contact with a person infected with Ebola or who has died from Ebola, using jik and water as you clear the vomit and diarrhea of a person suspected to be suffering from Ebola, disinfecting the bedding and clothing of an infected person with jik, avoiding contact with bats and monkeys, avoiding communal hand washing during funeral rites, reporting any suspected case of Ebola to your nearest health facility immediately. Persons who have died from Ebola must be buried immediately by a trained burial team to prevent the spread of Ebola. Remember to report all suspected cases to your nearest health facility. For further information, send a free SMS to YouReport on 8500 or call toll-free on 0800 100066. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from UNICEF, WHO, USAID of LAM.
Tomorrow night.
Hurry up! Don't let it get away! Come on, man! It's going to kill me! Hurry, hurry! Oh, this is going to kill me, Mauro! Run after it! Catch it! Please, hurry up! Go after it and catch it, Mauro! Oh, I'm gonna get fired if we don't catch that turkey! Come here, please don't let it enter the office! Hurry up! Oh, I better call somebody! Hurry up, catch it! Security? Be on the lookout, because there's a turkey on the loose. Don't let it out of the hotel facilities under any circumstances. You have to
Tomorrow night.
Watching the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing the current political standoff. Is the media setting the agenda? And Mike Segawa is watching us and says, Barbara is spot on tonight. One point I would love to add is on her take on opportunities and social media that social media presents for the traditional media to expand narratives and explain issues with utmost verification. Social media is also an opportunity for traditional media to distribute their content to audiences they've never reached before, using traditional distribution channels. If you look at New York Times, they have actually harnessed digital media to also grow their revenues to the in excess of $24 million this year. I have a message here from Musa Ladu who says, Charles, granted, newsrooms lack experience and there is no shortcut to that. I would like to hear Barbara's and Charles's view about how to deal with this. Can we first respond to that?
Well, experience is, there are two ways. There's experience that comes over time. There's experience that comes over doing things, you know, quickly and perhaps, you know, consistently. So I think training is one aspect that we can try and use quickly to build the experience of the young journalists, the mentoring, and of course some experience. Some things are not learned. Some things are not learned. They are learned on the go. You will perhaps 5, 10 years ago. I mean, when we were just starting out, 15 years, 20 years ago, we never had situations like this, for instance, covering riots. There's no experience. The older journalists have no experience covering riots. The younger journalists actually have that experience, and they do a tremendous job.
Well, for Uganda's case, you trace back the first serious demonstrations. If you went back to about 2002, January 2002, the demonstration called by the Uganda People's Congress that resulted in the killing of Jimmy Higenyi
at Uganda House.
At Uganda House. Yeah. Then you can graduate through and arrive. The more critical moment you would find was around 2005. The return, the return of Kizza Besigye in 2005. Running from 2005, I think November 14th, all the way through 2007.
I think during the referendum as well, the referendum
yes.
to amend the constitution.
Yes, but that stretch hit the climax in April, I think 2007, with the Mavera riots.
Yes.
Then you continue through. You have a peak again in 2009, the Buganda riots, and then that launches into the walk to work in 2011.
So you could say that there is experience that you get as you get
That's
along.
almost 20 years of experience, isn't it?
Yes. But then the issue that perhaps the limitations that we have in the newsrooms or in the coverage is about the context, the things that you brought, the depth, the analysis, and the balance that we have to bring. That comes through training, and also the journalists need to appreciate that that's the most important thing that they need to, how they present their stories. They must take that professionalism seriously, then they will quickly learn the ropes.
Barbara, you take, because you do training for journalists. So the training part might be covered. If we had somebody from Makime, for example, either people like Rachel, people like Bernard Tabaire, people like Dr. Peter Mwesige. And if you went to newsrooms that have, newsroom like the New Vision, for example, I thought we'd have somebody from the New Vision here, but they were not able to make it. But, and somebody from Red Paper. If you had people like, newsrooms that have actually that experience, are they providing the context? Are they providing the analysis? But also the young crop of journalists that you're talking about, are they ready? Are they trying to invest in themselves to harness the internet and do research? Do you find people in your news in your libraries trying to read up on things, pick up those old files, and educate themselves and create the context for themselves?
I think you've partly actually answered the question. Journalism is a profession that you actually only perfect the trade by self-training. However much, they trained you, even every single day for 365 days, train and mentor you and all that. Mentoring, yes, contributes. Training, yes, contribute. But the self-drive, it is that self-drive actually that keeps you in the profession. Sorry, it's just that keeps in the profession, and also keeps, because you have to read widely. And this is not only a problem with journalism, it's a problem with other professions that people actually, our reading culture, is close to zero. Okay, we don't read, we don't research. Okay, you're supposed to research deeply, and research means reading, means talking to people, means seeking out opinions from other people, and means also seeking out people to actually mentor you, people you look up to, and just not only within Uganda but outside Uganda. But then also the other challenge we have that we need to find a way of navigating is that the media right now, or the media industry right now, runs as a profit-making industry. The business of journalism right now is just about how much money are you bringing in, how much money is that story bringing in, what is it that I'm going to get out of that story? And that's the question that we're being asked every single day as journalists. As the news editor, you're not only mentoring people. As a news editor, you're not only actually editing stories every day, but you're also thinking about the markets. You're thinking about the brand. We play what we call the Trinity role. You're the editor, you're the circulation manager, you're the marketing manager. You have to think all that. And because you have to think in the Trinity line, you do not have time to think of training. You do not have that time to devote to mentor the young people, because there's a lot happening right now. So we need to metamorph, from just being a journalist, to actually also see how we can balance business and journalism. Very few good journalists are good business people. Very few good journalists are actually good managers. Okay, and because of that, you have people who do not know anything about the profession, now running the business aspect and running the media houses, because they're better business people, they're better managers than you, the journalists. So how do we separate the business of journalism from the business of the business, as in making profit? How do we separate that?
Charles, do you want to try that? Because I know you'd walk into a meeting and you're being asked questions about your numbers, your saturation numbers, and then the people who are in the business of bringing business into the daily monitor are saying you are the ones, you're frustrating the efforts
by running this and that.
Yes,
I think those challenges are as old as journalism. I think they have been navigated over the years. I mean, from the time when the printed word came out, the editors had to face those challenges. Our responsibility is to create that balance. We have a responsibility to the readers and to our audience and to the mission and vision of the organizations that we manage. We have a responsibility to the society, to the truth, to give context, to educate, to entertain. But there are all these challenges that ultimately they must be supported by the business. But businesses come to the media when the media has credibility, when it has the trust. And that trust only comes when your brand is trusted because of the stories that you do. So we always will have arguments with the commercial people. And ultimately, if the commercial argument takes the day, it will affect journalism.
Let me flip this a little bit. When the media becomes gets caught in the crossroads, you see a lot of vicious attack, especially by online trolls, if you'd call them that. And many of these online trolls, for Uganda's case, are largely state functionaries, viciously attacking the media and how it has executed its responsibility. That extends. The president of this republic has described the Daily Monitor, NTV, as the evil Daily Monitor, evil NTV. The soldiers of the elite Special Forces Command, that guard the president, supported by those from the chieftains of military intelligence and those from the internal security organization, turn on journalists and beat them like you actually do to evil. Because evil, it's like a snake. If you saw the way they were beating Jimmy Akena the other day, they're beating Jimmy Akena like he was a snake. You want to really crush his head and make sure he doesn't rise up again.
Like it is in the book of Genesis, that when you find it, you crush its head.
Yes, exactly. How did you arrive at that? What does that mean for the truth that you're talking about? For the business?
Certainly, it means that all these forces that are trying to exert pressure on the media, they understand the importance of the media, and they understand that the journalists, the work the journalists are doing is not serving their interests. It's serving the greater interests of the society by putting out the truth, and they don't want the truth out. Our responsibility as journalists is to keep pushing the truth. And ultimately, the biggest safety or the biggest support or assurance of survival for the media is out there with the readers. So we need to ensure, first of all, that we are able to serve our audiences. And then whatever attacks that come through, they will not break the media.
Barbara, just a little bit more to that context. When we thought that the attack on James Akena, the attack on Alfred Ochuo, the arrest and harassment of the NTV journalists in Arua, and the military leadership and the police leadership came out and offered an apology, you thought that was accidental. Then, lo and behold, on Thursday, the NBS journalist,
cameraman,
the NBS cameraman, is beaten to pulp because he's run from Kira Road, where their offices are, down to Bobby Wine's place, the ghetto, to cover that story. And he's beaten. And you can see that he's dressed as a journalist. They can identify him. He's carrying his camera, but they're beating him nonetheless. Does this say something about what exactly those who hold power feel about traditional media versus their feeling that traditional media has lost its place, what they publicly proclaim, that traditional media might have lost its place to social media?
It's in, I think it was 2006 when I was beaten by soldiers. The day President Museveni was sworn in, the day Kizza Besigye returned. After that famous pepper spray.
That should be 2011.
Yeah, that's 2011. When I was beaten by soldiers, not by policemen. We were dragged out of our car. It was a branded car, New Vision car. I was a reporter with the New Vision at that time. And just before that, while we were at the airport waiting for Kizza Besigye to arrive, the people who had gathered, his supporters, they're saying, journalists don't go. Because if you go, they're actually going to beat us and there will be no one to either take pictures, there will be no one to capture or tell our story. Yeah. So we're going to hang around you. So we moved, the crowd also moved. We moved, the crowd also came closer. Because then, to them, we were witness.
You kind of protection.
And not only witness, but the protection, actually, that when they beat them, we were there to capture the moment. So then we get into that, we had jackets. All the cameramen had jackets. So then, when we get to Najuna Kumbi, okay, and all of a sudden, soldiers, okay, came, dragged us out of the car. I was trying to actually make a call at that time to my editor to tell them that they had actually beaten the cameraman, because the cameraman it was a pickup, a double cabin pickup. The camera guys were behind. So I was trying to make a call to say the camera people had been beaten. So we need to be rescued. We need rescue because they were bleeding. And then as I was making that call, this soldier opened the car and dragged me out and said, why are you calling? Who are you calling? And all that. So this is not the first time that actually there's an attack on the media. So we've had this before. There was the famous UP 19, that's Uganda Police 19, I think 87. There was that car, 87 or 78. I need to remember it. I noted it down. 2011. I still have it in my notebook where they used to take people. So so I do believe that time the military issued an apology. We had a meeting at Mbuya, the military headquarters. So they issued an apology. The cameras were actually replaced. The journalists were actually, approached and said, we are sorry and everything. But now this is happening. It looks like the apology is now becoming normal. It's becoming the norm. Yeah, we beat them, we destroy their cameers, we can still buy other cameras, and we can still apologize.
They're spending taxpayers' money anyway.
Yeah, and actually, it's taxpayers' money. So there's actually no pinch. So can we maybe now devise another means, of doing this? Can we then sue individual policemen? Can we sue individual soldiers? Maybe that way they will actually feel the pinch and know that they're not going to sue the state, but they're going to sue me individually. I'm going to be responsible for beating this journalist. I'm going to be responsible for actually stifling freedom of the press.
Charles, you wanted to come in. But if the tone is set by the President of the Republic, who tells you these are evil people, you deal with evil exactly the way the soldiers have dealt with journalists. I'm getting some feedback here. You're talking about that incident in 2011, May 12, 2011, I think. That was the swearing in day.
Yeah, the swearing in day. Yeah.
There was someone driving a police pickup who kept trying to knock the vehicle we're traveling in.
Yes.
He kept actually hitting at it. I think it's a UP 036 something, 036 something from the police. And he kept knocking our car, trying to knock us. We were in the middle of the road and he was driving on the shoulders and trying to knock our vehicle off the road. Then there were people who were, I think it was Edward Ochom, who was Commander Kampala Metropolitan, who saved I think Andrew Bagala of the Monitor, and told him, get out of here because they're going to beat you to pulp. It's a fairly long tradition. Someone, Abu Luboa, is watching us and says the beating of journalists, the beating has caused us all to call for prayers and we report them to God. We have tried to meet them, demonstrate, but nothing is changing. National prayers for journalists. Abu Lubowa. Charles, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to say is that this is not new, and obviously it shows that the establishment, the security forces are not moving and are not improving professionally, because ideally they should know. The police, ever since the Kampala DPC, I think it was Mwesigwa, the one who was sued personally, I think the police was beginning to at least to recognize that journalists have a duty when they are doing their work. Sometimes they would get into the skirmishes, but it wasn't targeted the way we saw in the last few weeks with the military. The military obviously is taking a cue that this is these guys need to be finished off because they are the unwanted witnesses. It's very unfortunate, but I think we still have to stand up and do what we have to do and challenge the authorities. Fortunately, if at least they can come out and apologize for that week, it shows that they understand that what they are doing is wrong. And
Charles, I'm afraid to act like a debater here. I actually do not think so. I think it's been the character of the Museveni government and the Museveni administration ever since. He knows how to strike, to play the balancing act. When he tends to move towards what might be interpreted as dictatorial tendencies, he knows how to quickly come back and play the Democrat. So even the apologies that come through are part of that act, well choreographed act. And Charles, is asking a question. Let me throw it to you, ladies and gentlemen. We are seeing the military beating up journalists to near death. Journalists do not own media houses, because if they did, perhaps they would put a blackout on covering UPDF activities. How should journalists balance between their interests of safety and the interests of media house owners, which I should actually, Inteja, with your permission, I would amend, the interest to earn that salary, however small it might be. How do you strike that balance? Barbara, you want to give that a shot?
You see, they say that there's a famous saying in the newsroom that no dead journalist tells a story. Okay, you have to first take care of yourself, you know, keep safe, and then then you can tell the story. I don't think that that a journalist can then balance the interests of the media owner, the editor, and he or she, you know, while in the field. The role of the journalist is to go out there and report, okay? Report what is truth, what you're observing, and also that is the only defense that we have, that we report truth, okay? It's our only defense, and we do this on behalf of the public. If we're acting as witness, we're acting as witness on behalf of the public. So everything that we do it on behalf of the public. That's our only defense, that even when they take you to court and everything else. Now, it's the role of the editor to balance then the interest of the story that this journalist is writing with the interest of the media owner. That's why there's that editor who is standing between the reporter and then the media, the business owner. Because then this editor can then work with the legal department, because there's a legal department, you know, who can then also help shield this journalist when this journalist is taken to court. But then also we need to be aware that almost 70% of people in our newsroom are freelance journalists. And because you're a freelance journalist, you do not have that legal representation. You do not have the insurance, and you do not have the protection that a staff journalist actually has. So now, what should the editors do? Should there be some kind of contract between the editors and the freelance journalists, especially the ones who report riots? That is maybe how an individual journalist can protect himself, that he must have a contract that if I'm going to report your riots, I'm your guy, okay, who is always like on the front line. Then can you have that contract with me that I'm freelance, but I'll have the legal representation, I'll have the medical insurance for injuries that occurred to me during riots or during the demonstration and all that. But also the other thing is that there is actually need now for training, train both the soldiers on the roles of the media, what press freedom is, who are
Human rights.
journalists is human rights. We need to train, because the president has been saying that we're professionalizing the army, but maybe the aspect of media, the rights of journalists was actually left out. Okay, maybe they just don't understand that. I don't want to believe they don't know. I believe they know, but then it's not been impressed upon them that actually they're doing a duty. They're serving their country just like
don't
they're
you think
serving a
that
country.
should go even more? Because especially for the Uganda People's Defense Forces, that presented itself as a professional army, different from the previous armies that we had in this country. To be seen to be beating up even ordinary citizens. They just don't have to be.
But I'm lucky the
journalists.
professionalism of the army is being tested right now. You know, it's never been tested.
I actually
It's never
don't
been
think,
tested.
I'm
We're
a
just
little
testing it.
cynical. I don't think that they don't know that they are doing the wrong thing. And no amount of training is going to let them behave better. I think this is a kind of a power contestation we are caught in, and the military is working as a tool in this power contestation, and it doesn't matter. There is no reason. They are not going to operate by the standards of reason. They are operating by the standards of the political template. So I think our salvation perhaps will come in with, you know, when you have more a kind of institutional changes in both the police, the military, the civil service, all this, essentially the Ugandan society. Because you have, look at what happened yesterday or the other day on weekend at Lugogo, where people were pelting
bottles at Baby Court.
Yeah, now if the fans there had guns and were on the street, how would they behave? Perhaps the same way. So I think there is a bit of political temperature that has taken out.
Thank you, Charles. Can we deal with the question of the political temperature, the political question, in the last segment, because we need to take a break now. But I'll take a message from Samobo, who says, thanks for the great debate. The cause of today's unfulfilling journalism began at the New Vision and at Monitor in the 1990s. Unlike in commercial banks and in the army, the managements at the time of the newsrooms opted to recruit highly educated individuals and parachuted them to the rank of editor without taking them through the trenches. And yet these are the people who are better placed to provide the context and analysis that your panelists alluded to. You guys were hired at the time you hired, you just ran through to become editors without going through the trenches. Andrew Irumba is watching us and says, it's very clear that it's no longer by mistake that journalists are clobbered by security operatives now. No, it's deliberate. Someone in security told me, we are the ones who are spreading the news to the world about the plight of the current quagmire in Uganda, that they want to deal with opposition in the dark. So we've also become part of the targeted group, and it's clear, no need to explain further. And I saw that list of 17 journalists who are allegedly signing a compact with the opposition to overthrow government.
But that has always happened. It's not the first time that they're actually releasing a list of journalists. Every time there's something like this, in order to intimidate the people who are in the field, the front runners actually, they always come up with a list.
So that's another security operation.
Yeah, it's a security operation.
Jose really. Nuabin is watching us and says, I think the media has reneged on its role of being analytical, investigative, and educative. They just report the news as is, where is. We are not getting enough information that can help us in self-preservation as a people. We as Africans, we are facing extinction by the New World Order through things like GMOs, weather modification, geoengineering, and use of contraceptives. Why should we always focus on politics when our future is foggy as a race? Well, Joseph Nwabin, a quick answer to you. The politicians have promised us, I'm afraid to use the phrase that President Museveni used in 1986. They promised us fundamental change, and since independence, the politicians have been promising us the liberation of the African, economic, political, and social. So we must debate the politics if we are going to hold those politicians accountable for the promises they have made to us. We'll take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be dealing with the political question in Uganda. What is it?
Introducing Kiri Soda in 4 different flavors: lemon, mixed berry, orange, and Kiri Cola. Celebrate life with Kiri Soda.
Let's celebrate life!
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice.
We condemn the banning of the Holy Scriptures in the strongest terms.
Economic activity is projected to grow to an average.
The Prince captain does well and takes a strike and it's
right of opposition. Please take your seat first. Take your seat.
I cannot koto in their puhu.
We have made sense of the events around you, putting political, health, social, cultural, economic, technological, entertainment, and sports issues into perspective for all Ugandans over 25 years, reaching up to 20 million Ugandans. Today, our commitment to telling the truth through incisive journalism hasn't waned. So, to speak from the truth's point of view, read the Daily Monitor on your smartphone, tablet, laptop, and in print. Daily Monitor. Truth every day.
Super Fever is sweeping across Uganda. Play now to win big this Sunday at 9:40 p.m. on NTV to see if you have won the 50 million shillings super jackpot. Simply send as little as 1,000 shillings to market code Super3 on MTN or business number 33311 on Airtel and get that super feeling today.
Tomorrow night.
Hurry up, don't let it get away! Come on, man! It's going to kill me! Hurry, hurry! Oh, this is going to kill me, Mauro! Run after it! Please, hurry up! Go after it and catch it, Mauro! Oh, I'm gonna get fired if we don't catch that turkey! Come here, please don't let it enter the office! Hurry up! Oh, I better call somebody! Hurry up, catch it! Security? Be on the lookout, because there's a turkey on the loose. Don't let it out of the hotel facilities under any circumstances. You have to grip.
Tomorrow night.
We will dedicate the last segment to discussing what is that political question that the country is battling with. But I'll take a few more messages from some of our viewers. Someone says, training. I hear of military colleagues in Uganda, but who are being trained? Only seniors are trained, but the lower ranks are mostly likely not.
No, Charles,
and he
Charles,
adds,
before you go.
Just a moment. Where are these soldiers recruited from? They are picked from within us, and they do the needful. This is from Paul Emodo. He says,
you want to censor that?
No, I saw something. Anderson Agaba, Nation Media is a business executive, says, okay, the problem with journalists is lack of coordination. They will all agree to boycott government activities, but before they execute, as agreed, the president will invite the biggest media houses or individuals to State House for a friendly discussion. I think let's vote. He's campaigning for a Uja president. I will not mention. So Anderson, your message is a question of coordination. But I want to dash for the last
just
part
on
of this
boycott. Just imagine if there was no coverage of Arua or what happened. Just imagine what those guys would have gone through.
No, you cover the media. You cover the stories.
So it is always important to keep the torch shining. I don't think boycott is a good issue. I think you need to keep the torch shining.
When there was a time when police was beating up journalists, there were several times when journalists threatened to boycott, like the press conference that the police calls. The military has its other activities that are not it getting caught in a situation, a situation like
those you can,
maybe it's been. I think he's asking
Just
about that.
Before you even leave that point,
I'm afraid I have very little time.
Just in under 1 second.
Yes,
in under 1 second.
You respond to that in a short time. What is that major political question that the country is grappling with, and how are we helping? Are we helping as journalists to get to contextualize that political question and find answers and guide the nation? Barbara?
I wish I could put my finger on that question that we're grappling with and all that. But before that, just quickly on training. Anyone can train, but depends on what is it that you're training the security guys. Okay? Are you training them and biasing them to focus on politics instead of focusing on security, instead of focusing on law and order? What kind of training are they receiving? That's the question. They're receiving training, but what kind of training are these people receiving? That's where the question is, and that's where the answer is. That the kind of training they're receiving is not the training that actually teaches of a policeman that your role is to keep law and order and respect the civil rights. They're not doing that.
Isn't the political question then, the political question is, which you say you can't find, if you wish you could put a finger to, isn't the political question then that the military, as we saw last week, has returned to the center of the political question in this country? That you don't have the police presence, you have military war-grade tanks rolling down Lumum Street to quell demonstrations actually anticipated even before they happened. That you have the chief of military intelligence in military fatigues standing commanding operations. That you have yes, that you have an operation being run by the military intelligence, special forces command, military police at the center of a political dispute in peacetime Kampala. Isn't that the political question?
I don't think the military left politics. It's not that they're returning to politics. They've always been there. They're present in parliament all the time. They're there. So the military never left politics, actually. And the commander-in-chief is a politician, is the president of this country. So you can't say the military has been completely detached from the politics in Uganda. All they needed was a test, and that test is coming now. The test that's coming now is that more and more Ugandans actually, since, let's say from the year 2000 up to now, they're getting bold, you know, and they're getting on the streets.
Why are they
and
getting
they're claiming their rights because they feel that the political leadership, okay, is not serving their interests. And that's why people are getting bold every single day. So for me right now, we just needed a test for the military, and that test is being provided right now.
Yeah. Charles, what is the political question that we're grappling with?
I think we don't have to be shy about this. I think it's the issue, the political question is the delayed transition. And because of the delayed transition, as you know, the government, President Museveni has been in power for 32 years now. So we are having a big section of the country getting agitated because the transition has delayed. And this issue is not just about the opposition, even within the NRM. So that's the big political question. And now what we are seeing is that the government has gone back to the old stick, which is the military. It's the stick that has worked before. They have gone back to it to try and manage the current unrest. And of course, the opposition and the young people especially are getting a lot more militant. They are getting more militant, and they are perhaps more than ever before. So that's the problem we have. And I think we will have to somehow, as a country, we have to navigate around this. And if we don't, it could explode, and we don't know where it will go.
Okay. As you can follow on on your screens, on social media, please follow us, make your comments, and even after the show, NTV Fourth Estate is the hashtag. Continue the debate. Let's carry on this debate, and especially the question: what is the major political question that we're trying to grapple with, both as the media but also as a country, that is not getting the answers and not getting the context that it deserves? Someone is asking a question here and says, what do people say about allegations of activism having invaded the media? And one of the examples they are giving is that when Mujuni of NBS, of NBS and Joel of NTV were part of Bobby Wine's demonstration downtown. I want to give a quick answer to that. That as individuals, we journalists have opinions, have beliefs, and the participation of Joel and Raymond was specifically in protest against the social media attacks. And they made that clear, and they can take a position. You can't take that away from them, and their job shouldn't take that away from them, provided they declare that they are not acting as journalists in that case, but they're acting as individuals. The list of journalists you referred to who were alleged to have agreed to work with the opposition was fake, created and circulated by CMI and ISO agents. This is from Wafolo Gutu. I think I...
Charles, you know, yeah, I said that, you know, it's interesting that these people actually created a list, and then they pretended to invite the journalists to actually ask them questions, you know, about this list. You create the list, you invite the journalists. Why? Okay. It's just a security trick that they play. But then again, back to the political question. Someone today actually asked me, who are the possible successors to President Museveni? Or who are the actually people who can be presidents? I mean, you know, who can lead Uganda and all that. And believe me, I failed to put a finger on a single individual after being, you know, reporting for 14 years and all that. And it's because that for the 32 years, you know, that President Museveni has been in power, I think for me, it's been a deliberate move not to have someone groomed, not to have young politicians mentored to actually take over. Because right now, when you have all the young politicians put together and you ask them, what's your plan for Uganda? I don't think any of them can come up with a blueprint or tell you, this is my plan for Uganda. This is where this country is. This is where I actually want to take this country. And there is absolutely, everyone, you know, is just, you know, moving in circles. Everyone is saying, okay, Museveni must go, President Museveni must go. But now, after President Museveni, how do we move on? How do we move on from here to the next? How do we move on from where we are right now to the next point? Who is going to lead this country? Is there someone we can point out?
Why does that question matter?
It matters because right now you have the current situation that has created a Bobi Wine. Okay, so we have Bobi Wine, who is 36 years old, who can identify with a bigger percentage, or the bigger percentage of this population can actually relate to, because 70 or 80% of them are below the age of 40. Okay, they can relate to him. So he's taken advantage of the current situation and is inspiring people to rise up. He's inspiring people to say, look here, you can actually stand up for your rights. It's inspiring people to say, look here, you can actually stand up and ask questions and put questions to your leaders. Okay, so he's demystifying all this, and he's a young person, and they can identify with him. And he's made this message very simple. He's not complicated it. He's speaking what they call the Ugandan English, is speaking the language of change right now. Yes, Uglish. And so he's riding, okay, you know, with the tides. So right now, but if you ask Bobi Wine, okay, Bobi Wine, what's your plan for this country? Or if you ask Bobi Wine, ways that there's no structure behind him, what's the structure that is actually, that you've actually put this place, or that's backing you up, that can actually take this country from point A to point B? It's not there. Okay. So that still leaves us with a political question even after President Museveni.
Charles, it's something I've been debating in my head. Does anyone to lead this country require any special skill set? And there's context to this. Yes. Before President Museveni, we've had 7 other presidents. Yeah. And the big question is, since independence in 1962 to 2018 today, what is that fundamental difference that's been created in this country because of leadership that you would have to draw a list and say, to be president of Uganda, these are the qualifications you need?
I think perhaps maybe that's where the media, we should try and give, you know, context to the population. What Uganda needs today is not a president. And that's where now the whole thing is, we are looking at the succession to Museveni. But the problem that we have is that I think what we need is to go back to build institutions. We need to go back to lay down the foundation, whatever is left of the 1967, 1995 constitution, whatever. We need to build new ethos. So you will have a new leader. We have had leaders in the past who didn't have any qualification, but they led. But where did they lead us? So I think the issue is not if we focus ourselves on looking at who should lead after Museveni. Coming and operating in the same situation with the same powers, with the same, system, chances are we will remain moving in that. Yeah, we'll remain moving. So I think we need to focus ourselves to say how can Uganda run better, or what should we do to make Uganda work for everyone.
Barbara, let me just create a little bit the same context, really the same question. Uganda has been from 1962 to 2018. That's how many years?
That's 55.
55? Yes, 55 years. For 55 years, two individuals have ruled this country for 48 years. No, for 40 years. Amin was one of the longest serving presidents in this country. Yes, in one go. Amin was the longest serving president only now after President Museveni. He ruled this country for 8 years. President Museveni has been at the helm for 32 years. Milton Obote had 2 broken terms. I think the first one was
9 and 5.
9 and 5.
4 and a half, perhaps.
Yes, 4 and a half.
4, 9 and 4. Those are 13.
Well, if you put out the first period when he was prime minister without executive powers, and then he gained executive powers later.
He was executive prime minister
Exactly.
from the very beginning.
He was from the beginning.
From 1962 to 1971.
71.
Yeah, those are 9
from
years.
1971. 9 years. Then he comes back in 1980, December 1980 to 1985. So, Obote, Amin, and Museveni. Put their qualifications. I've been trying to check. Did Obote complete his degree at Makerere?
Ask me another one. He didn't
he did not. He did not. And he actually went to...
Just a moment. He did not complete his degree at Makerere.
Yeah, he did not.
Idi Amin Dada did not even pretend about that. Yes, he got some honorary degree from Makerere. He was not educated, at least in your modern governance things. Yoweri Museveni arrived in power with a single degree in political science. If that is significant qualification in terms of academic qualifications, then you can raise the questions of who actually qualifies to lead this country. In terms of articulating an agenda, yes, people have spoken to believe that President Museveni at least had the resolve, he had the determination, and he was able to distinguish. But that was the context of the time. You had a contestation on which ideological wall or ideological side to lean on. And he chose the middle line. Though some people have looked at his thesis at Dar es Salaam University and said he was leaning Marxist at that time. So what is that uniqueness about leadership? What is that uniqueness about articulating an agenda that is required for a person to be, that you need to ask anybody who aspires to be president of Uganda before they can actually arrive on the stage?
I don't think you actually need the academic qualification in order to lead Uganda or to lead a country. If you look at examples across the world, I don't think the best leaders across the world are leaders, maybe people who've got degree in leadership or degree in political science or degree in military science or all that. It's not about academic qualification. What you need is one, there should be that person who is, angry enough, who is mad enough, and he's got this deliberate plan to actually lead. President Museveni, if you read his memoirs, if you read his books, if you read everything, even just listen to his narration, is that he's always wanted to be a leader. He always wanted to lead this country, and he actually, is a president of this country. One thing why I think why everyone is pointing to Bobi Wine and why everyone is paying attention to Bobi Wine is that Bobi Wine has been very deliberate from the time he was at school. When you listen to Bobi Wine's music, when you listen to Bobi Wine's narration, is that he's always been a civic leader. And a civic leader is someone who inspires, A civic leader is someone who is able to mobilize the community for their good. A civic leader is someone who is able to inspire the community to achieve a certain good. A civic leader is someone who is able to mobilize and ensure that there is social services for a community. There is education. Bobi Wine is paying school fees for the children in ghetto, so he's providing them with education. He's mobilizing them around sanitation and all that. Now, Bobi Wine has been...
Is that born out of...
so it's...
is that born out of his ambition to become a political leader, that he actually pays fees to build his political base? Is it born out of his good nature? Because you need, when a person arrives at the stage where Bobi Wine has arrived, you need also to question the engagements. The engagements. Are they targeted? Is it just being a smart political person to say, okay, I can add this on my CV to justify why I am where I am, or to try and get where I want to get?
I think civic leaders can actually be very deliberate, or can just be someone was, a good civic leader, and then he becomes a politician. For me, I've not closely interacted with Bobi Wine, but from what I read and the few interactions I've had with him, is that he's been a civic leader for a long time with deliberate objectives, and that is mobilize the community to achieve a certain good. And that's what he's been doing.
So you believe Bobi Wine wants to be president either through the ballot or through other means?
I wouldn't want to speak for him. No, Charles.
He's working to get to the ballot?
I can't speak for him, but I can speak for what I've been observing, what is actually doing. As a journalist, what I've been reporting actually.
Sorry, let me take a message. Let me take a message from Joe Osia in Ntinda, who says, state brutality against journalists is not by accident. It is a statement of change in the rules of engagement. The beating will happen again and again because the forces are not conducting peacetime exercises. Apologies are just cynical. The media needs to be more proactive in adapting to a reality where personal risk is going to escalate even further. Someone else, Bernard Imperi, is watching us, says, Charles, Ugandans should ask themselves what next after President Museveni. What is people power's agenda? It's not about slogans. The Bobbies of this world should tell Ugandans the alternative methods they intend to use. Someone has come back to us and says, Ugandans and the media should be pushing NRM leaders to dialogue and discuss the establishment of an all-inclusive transition administration. That administration should give us 1, a new constitution, 2, restructure and strengthen state institutions by making them accountable to the people, 3, handle truth-telling, justice and reconciliation. 4, finally organize elections. Those who will head the transition should not stand in those elections. Then we shall have a smooth transition from Museveni. Short of that, expect chaos in power contestation. Let me just take one more message. That message is here. Yeah. Sorry. Charles, this... Okay, thank you. That's a message for me. I'll not read it on air. No doubt, the rise of Trump has given leeway to for despotic leaders to attack the media with more zeal. The president of the US now calls the media the enemy of the people. In Russia, freedom of press doesn't exist. In China, there is no free press. With the US president undermining free press, does it surprise anyone that the president of Uganda now calls some media houses evil? Does it surprise anyone that he starts off some of his letters talking about Trump and fake news? Does it surprise anyone that the military beats journalists? If the US president has waged a war on a free press, who will keep autocratic leaders worldwide in check? No one. That's the verdict from this viewer. Another viewer says, the key political question is the validity of a constitution that is not enforceable. Power has been held beyond the reach of the people since 1896 or 1986, despite the various pre- and post-independent constitutions. Without civic maturity, there is no possibility of democracy in practice. Barbara and Charles, I'd like us to try to drive to a conclusion by looking at that incident at a concert where people paid their money to attend the concert. From what I have heard, Baby Cool did not rise politics. But Baby Cool has emerged in this industry that has become increasingly political, which is the entertainment industry, the music world, musicians and entertainers. Bobby Wine is born of this, but he has had what people would call conscious music.
Yes.
Baby Cool, on the other hand, with others, musicians, have been composed the song for Yoweri Museveni going into the 2016 elections and have identified publicly with that cause, and that caused a lot of friction. What's your interpretation of this? What does it mean?
Yeah, of course, music is a cross-cutting, art. It pulls people, and the politicians have realized the power of music. Bobby Wine has used music. Baby Cool is also using music to support, and a few others. So what we are seeing is now the politics now playing out in the arts. Unfortunately, I think the arts need to be separated, one or the other. I mean, the arts are part of society and they will reflect the politics. But there has to be an understanding that art should be consumed as art. So what we saw in at Lugogo was politics playing out on the stage. And I think that's very dangerous, because then we will get into a situation where we will start having, skirmishes because of the political leanings that different artists have taken.
But Charles, isn't it the fact that art has been used, and particularly music, at critical times? In the DR Congo, former Zaire, some artists decided to sing praise to President Mobutu Sese Seko.
Franco did. He composed the song Candida Nabiso Mobutu.
Exactly. In South Africa, at the height of apartheid, artists, entertainers, decided to use their talent, their platform, their fame to share political messages. In West Africa,
I think that's okay, Charles. That is fine for artists to infuse politics into the music. But how should we, who consume that art, how should we relate? I used to dance to that Mobutu song without knowing.
Without knowing that you're...
So I think the thing is that let Bobby Wine play music that, that pushes his agenda. Let Baby Cool do his thing. And let the discussion, let the arguments, or let's relate to them as purely art. They lift our conscience, but if we now try to go, if you go physical, and then you create a no-win situation. And I think that's a bit dangerous.
That's an interesting comment someone is saying. Journalists are partisan. All of them belong to the opposition. Barbara, a quick one, because I think we have about a minute to get out of here. The playing out on a stage of these different political opinions held by two well-celebrated entertainers in Baby Cool and Bobby Wine, because he was chased off the stage and people were shouting "People Power," and actually, when he was moved off the stage, it was a Bobby Wine song that started playing.
I think, like Charles said, art, be it literature, be it music, be it written, and all that, is art awakens people. And what has been happening is that Baby Cool and Bobby Wine are on the other side. Now, these are musicians who rely on the public for support, who rely on the public to rate their popularity. Now, when you decide to take sides, so you have a population that is, that is yearning for change. Now, this population that is yearning for change, as an artist, how do you respond to this? How you respond to this also determines how the public reacts to you. So how Bobby Wine responded has determined how the population or the Ugandans actually respond to him. How Baby Cool is interpreting that situation right now has also determined the reaction of Ugandans towards him. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me take this last message. Someone says, with time, people will appreciate that radicalism and extremism are mere painkillers. They momentarily take the pain, but don't heal the disease. Center-left is the real deal. Leadership today needs more moderates, not hungry wolves or satisfied, excited pigs. On the Baby Cool incident, if people power believers shouldn't pretend to be freedom, to be pro-freedom, if they can't tolerate dissenting voices, if they can beat opponents before they are in power, how dangerous and intolerant will they be if at all they got to power? But just to close this show, I think the question is, if the people who hold power treat the dissenting voices are people they should crush without listening, you create the combustion that will lead to an explosion in this country. Because these sentiments are not just fringe. I think they have graduated from fringe sentiments. We've seen them over a long period of time. I mean, the Kabaka riots of 2009, the walk to work of 2011, now the Bobby Wine protests, tell you that this anger is not emerging out of nowhere. It is emerging out of somewhere. And the moment this is dealt with as that, then you can deal with the transitional question that you're talking about. Short of that, you'll end up in a government, in a kind of, well, we can predict where that would end. You don't need you don't need any rewards to predict how this would eventually end. Thank you very much, Charles Odobo Bichachi, Executive Editor at the Daily Monitor, for making time.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Barbara Among. You're a journalism trainer and you described yourself as veteran. Thank you very much for making time for the show, and thank you very much. Thank you very much to you all, our viewers, for joining us tonight. And always, the debate is intense on my phone and on our social media platforms. Please continue this. Let it go on as much as we can. Let's answer the questions that we need to answer for Ugandans. Thank you very much to our production crew that stay up late to deliver the show to you. From me, it's a good night.